Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Deborah McGrath, Senior Manager, Technical Product Solutions Marketing, and I'm going to be your host for the webinar today. You're going to hear one of our amazing solution consultants, Corey Zahora, speak about demand management challenges and discuss and demo how ServiceNow helps to solve those challenges. Corey is a senior inside solution consultant with a specialization in strategic portfolio management. Most of what we'll be discussing and showing are features that are available as of our Tokyo release. But if we do mention any planned new features, we'll be sure to clarify that they're on our roadmap and subject to change. And because of that, we've also included our safe harbor notice that this presentation may contain forward-looking statements that reflect the current beliefs of ServiceNow. All are based on current information available. Actual results may differ materially and should not be relied upon in making purchasing decisions. And as always, we'll save a few minutes at the end for Q&A. So please submit any questions you have to the Q&A. Looking forward to the discussion and your demo. So Corey, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Deborah, and hello, everyone. So just to go over our agenda today, we're going to start by giving an overview of SPM and where demand management falls into place. Then I'll be giving an overview of ideation and demand management and the workflows that go with them. After, I'm going to jump right into the demo so that you can see how this works in real time. And then we'll wrap up today with some additional resources and upcoming events that we have. So with that, let's get started. So let's first look at ServiceNow's approach to SPM. We've really developed 3 steps so that your organization can plan, prioritize, and track work in the context of business objectives while giving everyone visibility. So the first step that we have is strategy. You want to roadmap your strategy to maximize outcomes. With SPM, we give you the capabilities to organize your goals and targets or OKRs, and then create that strategic roadmap through planning and prioritizing what work you have in your pipeline. So really with this, you can make sure your organization has an outline of what you'd like to accomplish. The next step is alignment. You want to make sure you align investments to implement those strategies. With our centralized demand, we give your organization a single source of work intake. These demands can come from any of your internal teams or your customers. And with our ideation or idea portal, your organization can get employee and customer feedback around new ideas and how their work can be accomplished. There's also going to be a lot of continuous planning and review during this stage to make sure that your investments are going to the right work. So this stage, of course, is going to be the main focus of today. And the last step is delivery. Organizations are becoming more agile these days. So you want to make sure you can deliver on your work using any methodology. Doesn't matter if your organization uses agile, safe, waterfall, or hybrid methodologies, you can utilize them all to track and manage your projects. With our unified enterprise backlog, you can also tie in other parts of the platform to manage incidents, problems, customer projects or work orders, as well as releases and changes. And with continuous improvement, you can tie your outcome realizations back to your strategies in order to be even more efficient. So now with our approach laid out, let's look at how that centralized project intake flows. So I'm only going to focus on the idea portal and idea section on this slide because the next one has similar information. But we can start our demand management in different ways. The first would be our idea portal. This is a fantastic system because it engages end users around the next big idea. It allows end users to collaborate on ideas by voting or commenting on them. It acts as a single source of ideas in your organization. It provides a pipeline of vetted ideas, and it keeps the end users informed on idea status and progress. So these ideas can then be turned into demands, which I will show you in the demo. But going to our next slide here, focusing on demands here as well. You don't have to start with the idea portal, as demands can be requested from multiple areas. So through the service portal, from specific apps in your application portfolio, from your technology portfolio, or from any business capabilities that you may have. As a demand is created, you'll have the ability to align it to your strategic goals and have any key stakeholders or decision makers qualify it. So then it can be reviewed by your PMO team or portfolio manager to determine when it can be worked on. So really, talking about being strategic, our demand management gives you all those capabilities to be so. So with our demand management too, all IT, business and application portfolio, program and project work is located in one location where we can then help decrease costs from operational work and grow strategic initiatives, since your organization now has a full picture of both operational and strategic demand. So with that, I'm going to dive into the demo so that we can see this in action. So I am a demand manager currently, and as you can see on my screen, I am in our demand manager dashboard. Now, I love showing our dashboards as they are out of the box and configurable. But with this dashboard specifically, you're going to get a nice high-level overview of all the ideas and demands that you have within your organization. So you can see here, any new submitted ideas, your demands. You can look at the pipeline that's associated with them as well. So the total forecast cost, if it's strategic versus operational, if it's CapEx versus OpEx, any demand analysis that you have. You can also see if there's any demands submitted that are not actioned by a state. And then you can also look at your demand intake trend here. So really, again, just giving your demand managers, your organization, that high-level overview. You can go into the pipeline analysis here as well, so that you can actually see, where your demands are by business application. You can look at your demands by business capabilities, by your business unit, by type, look at your capital budgets with your demands. And then again, looking at your pipeline, the forecast cost, and then resources from pipeline versus in-flight forecast. So again, just some additional information that you can see for your demands. If we want to look at our idea pipeline, we can see this in a visual task board. And from this view, you can see all the different phases that your ideas can go through. Each one of your ideas is going to be listed as one of these cards here. And if you want to click on the idea here, you can actually see the idea, all the information that is a part of it. But I'll actually go into the idea portal and show you ideas from there instead of from here. And then, looking at moving these through the swim lanes, you can just drag and drop these cards if or if you have the privileges to move ideas through one swim lane to another, you can easily do so from this page. And then you can also assign any resources to these ideas as well, in case if you want someone specific working on them. You can also view demands in the same regard. So another visual task board with the same type of cards. You can access the demand information from here as well. And you'll see that these are going to have different swim lanes because your demands are going to go through different processes. You'll also see that we have these demands split into different portfolios. So this way you can align demands to specific portfolios that might be tied to some key stakeholders to make decisions on, whether they should move forward with those demands or not. So with that, I'm first going to go into our idea portal to see how we can create a demand. So this is our idea portal. And from this page, you can see all the ideas that have been created. You can also filter it to look at your own ideas if you specifically want to see what you have created. You can also sort your ideas by state. So looking at the swim lanes that we saw on the visual task board, you can select those. And then you can also align your ideas to specific categories. If you want to sort your ideas specifically, you can see them by recent, most voted, or created. Now, what I also mentioned on the idea slide is that you have full capabilities to upvote and downvote on these ideas. And then you can actually go into the idea to see what information has been presented with it. So you can see, gauge user interest, see who's been commenting on them. And you can also subscribe to certain ideas so that if you want to see the progress and what's been happening with the idea, you can get notifications in order to do so. Now, if you see an idea, if you go back to, your PMO team or who's ever making the decisions to authorize the ideas, you can actually go ahead and create a demand directly from the idea if it passes, all your uh, ideas, or I should say, any information that you want to create a demand out of it. You can do so directly from the idea itself. So from here, going to create a task, you can actually go into the idea and create a demand from it. But you can also, if it's something that that you want to work on, you can also create a project, an epic, a story, any safe or improvement initiative from the ideas as well. So really a lot of flexibility on what you can do with your ideas. And then creating an idea is also just as easy as creating a demand from an idea. As we go into creating an idea, and if we type in a title here, so if I just type in new idea, you can see that there are related ideas to what I have typed in the title. So with that, really the value there is that it helps not create multiple of the same ideas. You want to make sure that the idea portal that you're utilizing isn't just filled with the same idea over and over again. So this gives your users a good way to check on other ideas that might be related to the one that you're creating. If your idea hasn't been created before, you can go ahead and fill out the rest of the information here. So you can select a category that you want this idea to be a part of. And then in the description section here, this is where you're going to fill out as much or as little detail as you want about your idea. You'll have the ability to add in any hyperlinks, any pictures, any tables, add any attachments to these ideas as well, just to make sure that you can get your point across. So with that, if you don't want to use the idea portal, if you're going to create a demand from one of the other areas that I had talked about in the slides, you can go ahead and do so. So from this create a new demand form, I actually am accessing this from the service catalog. And with this form, this form is configurable. So right now I have only one required field on here that you need to fill out, but these you can have more fields that are required so that when your users are creating demands specifically from the service catalog or from anywhere else, you can make sure that all the information you want input before it goes in the draft stage has been filled out. So from this form, you can see the creating a new demand. You can see the type of request that it has. So for this, we only have project or enhancement that we can create for this demand. You can see the business area that you can tie it to, any strategic alignment that you want to tie it to. You can look at the start date and delivery date. You can look at the size of the demand. We have this labeled as a t-shirt size right now, but you can, see how large of a demand could potentially be coming through. Looking at the estimated cost, expected financial benefits, you can put all that information in there. And then looking at the business justification, any business areas, capabilities, applications affected, looking at your known risks, what if we don't do it, any known assumptions. And again, you can even add attachments to these demands as well. So really, we want to give you, all the fields of information so that when you create a demand, you can kind of hit the ground running to then, put it through its process. So with that, after we have created a demand, I'm actually going to go into a demand that has already been created here. So this is going to be our Acme new hire survey demand. And you can see that we have a category aligned to it. We can see the type that we want this demand to be turned into. But again, with your demands, like we saw with the ideas, you can have it be an enhancement, an epic, story, safe, anything else that you want your demand to go into. We're going to have a demand number that's auto-generated from creating the demand. We can see our approved start date, end date, as well as a start date. If there's any description that we want with this demand, that we can see this as well. In the details tab here, we can see that this demand is actually aligned to a portfolio. We can also align it to a program, an investment class. We can see the investment type if we would like to as well. We can see who it was submitted by, and if it was submitted from an idea, we can see that record as well. If we want to assign a demand manager to it, we can, or even a project manager if we know that it's going to be turned into a project and we have a project manager in mind for it. You can see your department, business unit, priority, filling out the business capabilities, applications that we saw on the demand form. Those can be populated here as well. So really just providing as much detailed information as you can in this part here. If we go over to our business case, we can then see if this demand has been aligned to strategic priority, if there's been a primary goal. You can continue to build out the business case here. So looking at your risks of performing, not performing, any enablers, barriers, in scope, out of scope, any assumptions that you have with the demand. So really, again, just making sure you get all the detailed information that you can within the demand. Looking at the financials from a high level, you can add cost plans and resource plans with your demands too. And with that, any expenses that you have, CapEx or OpEx expenses, you can make sure to add those here. And that's actually going to give you, your ROI, as well as you can see your NPV from this financial section here too. But if you want to get more of a breakdown, we can actually go into the financial section here. And from this summary page, you can see all the cost plans that we have associated with this demand. If you have any monetary benefit plans, you can add those here, as well as any funding streams too. So at the top, you can also see, your total plan cost, if it's CapEx or OpEx, your budget, actuals, financial return, and any benefits that you have. And then if you want to see different fields or views for this table too, you can see it by yearly, quarterly, or monthly. Talking about your resource plans as well, we can actually go ahead and dive into our resource plans that we have here. And this is just going to be, giving you a good idea of what resource that you potentially want to utilize for your demand. If it's turned into a project, you can create those here, or you can create them in the project as well. But if you really want to make sure you get all or as much detailed information in your demands before, it's moved on and qualified and turned into a project, you have full capabilities to do so in terms of planning. Now, if we go down to the bottom here, we can see in our related tables that you can actually create demand tasks that can be associated with this demand. So if there's anything or any information that needs to be added to the demand before it gets qualified, you can make sure to create those specifically from this section here. Since this demand is aligned to a portfolio, we do have key stakeholders that are associated with that portfolio. So you can see all of them that have been auto-populated from being in that portfolio within this section here. And again, if you have any risks, issues, other information here, you can see those there. From the resource plans that we went into that other page, you can also just see a high-level overview of what those plans are from this section. So you can see the hours planned, planned costs, and then you can dive into the actual resource plans from here as well. And then looking at our cost plans too, just giving you that same high-level information that we saw in that other page. So really, looking at doing, adding all the information that you can on one page, that is, really a great value that ServiceNow's demand management has. So after you've entered in all the necessary information that you have or that you need for the demand, I can go ahead and submit this demand, and you can see at the top that will move the demand through its next phase to go to submitted. And as demands are submitted, you can actually go to the assessment data tab here, and you can see if an assessment is required for this demand to become qualified. So if this box is checked off here, an assessment is going to go to the key stakeholders, and they're going to be able to fill out that assessment and score the demand so that it can become qualified. And that's really how it goes through the screening phase. But like I mentioned before, if you have a demand manager or someone that is able to bypass that assessment and bypass the screening phase, they can go ahead and qualify demand without having to go through that process. So just for the purpose of this webinar, we'll bypass that assessment, and I'm actually going to make this demand a low risk and high value demand. because we want to make sure that we can turn it into a project and it gets qualified appropriately. The size of the demand, we'll keep it as medium. And as I qualify this demand, you're going to see that our score here populates. So you see now that we have a risk score associated with this demand. You can see that we bypassed the screening phase, so we don't have the assessment. And now our demand is in a qualified state. So with your demand in the qualified state, how do you then determine what demand you want to turn into a project, or, what you really want to work on? So that's where our allocation workbench comes in. And I need to get rid of the Zoom bar up there, but instead I am going to go to the demand workbench from here. So from the demand workbench, we can see a bubble chart at the top here. And on the axes, we have value and risk. Hovering over each one of these demands, you can see the risk, value, and size that's associated with them. And even, you can gauge the size of the demand just based on the size of the bubble. So with value and risk here, any of your demands that are going to be in the top left quadrant, they're going to be higher value, lower risk. So probably something that your organization would want to pursue. As we move to the bottom right here, these are going to be your high risk, low value demands. So probably something that's going to be that you're going to want to reevaluate. Not necessarily something that you don't want to work on. It definitely might be an important demand, but it is something that has potentially high risk that you want to make sure you address before you start working on it or change it into a project. On the bottom here, you can see all the demands that we have within this chart. You can see the numbers associated with them, the portfolios, what stage, risk, value, size that they are. And then you can also sort through these, if you want to see a specific portfolio, you can do so from there, or, you can sort from A to Z or group by portfolio if you want to get a high level, overview of what those demands are. So that is our demand management in a nutshell. I'm going to go back to the slides now and go into our next section on resources and upcoming events. So on this page, we have some great resources for you all to further, gain knowledge on our demand management. We have our, of course, product page on demand management. We have some white papers that you can access. And then we also have a couple videos, one being a value talk video and the other being a demo now video for centralized demand management. And if there's any additional information that you need, you're always welcome to look at our community page, as well as looking at, the product page of strategic portfolio management that we have. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Deborah to talk about our upcoming events.
Hey, Corey, thank you so much. That was great. On the last Thursday of every month, we present a webinar on new SPM capabilities or enhancements to existing applications. And you can access this webinar or any of our prior last Thursday's webinars on demand at community.servicenow.com, or click on the tiny URL that I posted in the chat. Our next webinar will be on Thursday, March 30th, and this one is our SPM Utah release overview. So all those great capabilities that are coming out with our Utah release. Join us for a discussion of that. We also have an APM summit that's happening 2 days before that. Please join us for that, where you can hear directly from customers about how they're managing their application technology portfolios with ServiceNow, as well as a panel that discusses how they're leveraging APM along with IT asset management. And we'll also give you a sneak preview of our APM roadmap. Corey, one of my big takeaways from your presentation today is how we help centralize the capture of all demands, right? So both strategic and operational, from the ideation portal, but also from the service portal, change requests, and then be able to evaluate and qualify them together rather than in a vacuum. So you have a much idea of that whole idea to value stream. Several questions related to that. So let's jump to them. So the first one, can you address how the idea portal and other portals work to consolidate work and bring to demand? And I think you showed some of that, but can you just reiterate?
Yeah, so the idea portal, can be utilized by, your internal teams or your customers as just a way to bring ideas of how they can potentially do work better, new ideas for potential projects. And with that, adding in all those ideas to that one portal, like I showed you, there's a way that you can, vote on them, see what information is detailed in them, and then have, your approval team to be able to vet through them to see specifically what has gained the most traction, what is potentially a great idea that could align to your strategic goals. And then from there, create a demand from it, create a project from it if you want to skip the demand process. But really, we always recommend going through demand at that point, because you can have further continuous planning to see, all the additional resources, financials, any other information within the demand, be able to vet that out before it does get turned into a project.
Several related questions, but one was they wanted to see, can we see demand that becomes an enhancement? And they certainly could if we had an additional amount of time. We weren't prepared to show that, but that's actually the beauty of it. So it can become, you can convert it to any type, right? I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Corey.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the great thing about our demand management platform, is that there is so much that you can do with it, that it really is flexible and can be tailored to your organization's needs. So I, just showed you a little bit today on how you can turn it into a project potentially. But yeah, you can turn into enhancement, epic, a story, anything that your organization needs. That is, the flexibility that our demand management gives you.
We have several questions and we're really running up on time. I'm going to take one more. What happens if the assessment is created before the man moves to that qualified state? This company's business team wants to set the score manually rather than through an assessment.
So you don't have to send out an assessment as it goes through that phase. We see a lot of, our customers doing so just so that they can score it appropriately with the stakeholders. But you don't have to have that sent out. That doesn't have to be a part of the process. It's just something that we follow all PMI standards with our demand and project management. So that's something that we have in place, but you don't have to have that to be able to go through the screening phase. If you have a team that does that scoring themselves, you can have them do so if need be.
Corey, thank you so much for that great presentation and demo. Ryan, thank you for helping answer some of these questions as well.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you all for attending.